Hey, Smarty Pants! Here's something a lot of people get wrong about money. They claim it's always better to save a 6-month emergency fund before paying off debt. I even used to believe that before I ran the numbers, and mathematically, that is not true. In this video, I am going to go through 3 different strategies. One where you put all your money towards savings, one where you put all your money towards debt, and one that's a nice happy mix of the two, and illustrate what would happen at the end of 5 years, depending on which strategy you chose. You're going to be amazed at the results. Watch to the end as this is a really complicated subject, like there's lots of ins and outs. There really is no one right way to go, and I want you to be able to save as much money as possible. As always, this is for educational, informational purposes only. Speak to a financial professional to find out what is best for you. Let's look at the situation of a woman. We'll call her, I don't know, Dolly. She has 10 grand in credit card debt at 26% interest, and she wants to have all that debt gone and $12,000 in an emergency fund. Those are her goals. Awesome. Good for you, Dolly. High five. Her debt payment is $300 a month. And doing that, it's going to take her 5 full years to get rid of that 10 grand. My name is Kate Moody, financial educator and coach, here to help independent women outsmart their money. If that sounds good to you, be sure to subscribe. Looking over her budget, she sees that she can spare $500 a month to put towards both her debt and her savings. Starting in January of 2020, she has 3 different options to choose from when deciding what to do with this extra $200 she has. She can either put all $200 towards her savings and then just pay the minimum, that $300 on her credit cards, or she could split the $200, put $100 towards savings, $100 towards that debt, and then once the debt is paid off, put all of it towards savings, or she could put all $200 towards the debt. Once the debt is paid off, all $500 towards her savings account. Now, in all 3 of these scenarios, over the course of 5 years, she ends up spending $30,000. But what is left in her pocket at the end of those 5 years is very different. So after 5 years, in that first scenario, when she puts $200 to savings and then pays the minimum on debt payments, the blue is money she spent on her debt, the orange is money that is going into her savings account. Well, after all that time, she has spent about $18,000 on paying off her debts, and she has $12,000 in her emergency fund. Okay, not bad. Haha, until you start looking at where her money could have gone. If she were to have split that money, so $100 into savings and an extra $100 towards her debt payment every single month, and then once that debt is paid off, all $500 towards her savings, at the end of those 5 years, she would have spent $14,570 towards her debt, and she would have $15,400 in savings. That is $3,400 more in her pocket than the first scenario when she just paid the minimum on her debts. Now, the last scenario where she puts all the money towards her debt payments and then puts the $500 towards savings only when the debt is paid off, she ends up spending $13,300 on her debt and has $16,700 in savings, almost $5,000 more in her pocket at the end of those 5 years by paying off the debt first. This is how expensive debt really is. Point being, the sooner Dolly gets rid of her debt, the more money she has in her pocket. Now, let's look at this from another angle, because not only will she have more money in her pocket at the end of 5 years, but, oh my God, does this change the time frame for her debt payoff? These charts are chronological, so it goes from January of 2020 to December of 2024. In the first scenario, the debt takes 5 years to get rid of, and at the end of 5 years, she has $12,000 in savings. Cool. In the second scenario, her debt is paid off in January of 2023, and she hit her $12,000 savings goal in June of 2024. And in the last scenario, that card is paid off in March of 2022. So it would have been paid off by now, as I'm recording this in May of 2022. And she hit her $12,000 goal in March of 2024. Remember, as soon as her debt is paid off, that whole $500 is going to savings. Dolly is literally a rock star. Okay, so I gave you the pretty shiny scenarios, but let's pour some cold water on this. This is an idealized scenario, right? Dolly never lost her job. Dolly never went through a major life change that forced her to stop paying that extra $200 a month. Dolly never had an emergency where she had to dip into her emergency fund or pay that off with credit cards. And over the course of 5 years, chances are most people are going to have some kind of emergency. Again, this is an idealized scenario. Real life is different. Your situation is different than Dolly's. You have different amounts of debts at different interest rates. Your life situation is different, and your life is actually real, where real stuff does happen. Unlike the fake person I made up. Well, sort of fake person. Plus, Dolly kept saving that $500 a month even when she didn't have to. And a lot of people simply don't have the self-discipline. Like when they have the option to maybe have a little bit of extra spending money every month, a lot of people take it. So they would have reduced the amount of money that they put in towards their savings account. As a general rule of thumb, what would be best for most people if they're in this kind of a situation with high debt, but they also want to save a lot of money, to save an emergency fund of like $500 to $1,000 or so. That way, the little stuff that pops up, you don't have to charge to a credit card. You can just use your emergency fund money for. After you get that $500 to $1,000 in your emergency fund, throw all your extra money towards the debt. And it's really helpful if you decide on a set amount that you will put towards savings and debt payments. Just like Dolly did. She said $500 a month. And that's what she did. And then lastly, fill up that emergency fund with the full amount you were paying towards your debt. You have student loan debt and think you're eligible for one of the federal student loan forgiveness programs, but aren't sure where to start? I made you a cheat sheet that outlines 13 different federal student loan forgiveness programs. It tells you what they are, who they're for, how to apply, even some of the traps that people fall into with them. Check it out, link in the description. Hey, was this surprising or helpful to you? Please let me know in the comments, because I'm just talking into the void right now, so I'd like to hear some feedback. Thanks for watching. Cheers.